What's going on, guys? Thanks for coming back and checking out the video. Today we're going to talk about check engine lights, and the most common check engine light if you drive a Chrysler product. Right here I got my Jeep Wrangler, but this video kind of applies to anything Chrysler, okay, that's made pretty much after 2006. After 2006, Chrysler started, they pretty much have a problem with their evap systems, to where one of the components that's shared between a lot of the makes and models ends up failing, and you end up with the P0457 code, which is the loose gas cap code, and you'll see it pop up on your displays as loose gas cap. And if you're watching this video, you're pretty much watching it because you either have this code or you can't get rid of the message it keeps telling you. Well, all it is pretty much a component failure, and usually there's a code partnered with this one, and that partnered code is the P0455, which is gross leak system detected in the evaporative emission system. Okay, so what that means is there's a big hole somewhere in the fuel system. Okay, so usually you'll end up with the P0455 and this 457. Okay, so that just means a big hole, kind of like the gas cap's not on the filler. But the part that ends up failing is this part right here, and Chrysler likes to they use this in a ton of models, the same exact part. So this applies to, you know, your Jeeps, your Dodges, your Rams, your Ram trucks, your Chrysler 300s, your Dodge Chargers. This part is pretty much the same part, and it loves to fail. And if you ever, you know, if you get a chance to look at this thing, it doesn't really consist of much, so you can kind of tell that, yeah, it's cheap, it's going to fail. It doesn't take much for it to fail. But Dodge calls this thing let's see what they call it, Evaporative System Integrity Module. Okay, everybody else calls it an evap vent solenoid or a vent switch. Chrysler also likes to call it a canister leak detector pump, which I guess it's a leak detector, but I don't know about a pump. But yeah, I'll leave the the description for this thing down in the description box below, along with a link, so you can check that out if you need one of these. But basically, in today's video on my Wrangler, I'm going to show you how to replace this thing, and it'll get rid of the gas cap loose code. But on a Jeep Wrangler, it can be one of two things if you're getting these messages, okay? A lot of times it's this, or most of the times it's this, or this is going to happen to you eventually. But with the Jeep Wrangler specifically, there's a part on the gas tank that likes to break, and I'll point that out, and I'll go ahead and try to explain how this part works and how your evap system works when we get underneath the car. Alright, so under the car we have your gas tank, and this is underneath the Jeep Wrangler. Okay, and right there is the filler neck, and it runs up, you know, that's how you put the gas in the car, and there's your filler neck. Then from the gas tank you have a hose, right, and it goes right to a charcoal canister, and then you can actually see the vent solenoid right there connected to the charcoal canister, and there's a harness right there, and there's another hose. Okay, so what this thing actually does, all it is a switch that opens and closes. All it does, really, it allows the gas tank to breathe. You can't. Okay, so the government wants the fuel systems on these things, on all your cars, to be sealed and not leak any vapors out. So what this thing does is it's a switch that's pretty much like a door that stays open or closed. It's commanded open or closed, and for the most part it stays open. It's actually a breather for your fuel system, so you can put gas in it, because, you know, it's kind of like trying to fill up a water bottle, you know, and if it doesn't have the bottle doesn't have a way to breathe, it kind of just spits back at you, you know. It's kind of the same thing, okay? But the way this works is this line goes to the gas tank, and it's connected to the canister, and this canister is designed to take the vapors from your gas tank and absorb them. And the way it does that is it breathes through this switch pretty much back and forth. So for 99% of the time, this thing is open and it breathes through this line that goes back up to the filler neck. But every once in a while, the car will test itself, and it wants to make sure that from here all the way into the gas tank, all the way to the motor, that the system is sealed and it's not leaking any fumes. So it will actually close itself off from here and it won't breathe. This usually happens when you first start the car up and it's trying to warm up, or if you're going down the street, down the highway at like 50-60 miles an hour. The car can tell kind of what you're doing, and it'll do a check real quick. It'll close the switch off and actually see if the system's leaking. And if the system's leaking, it'll give you a check engine light, either for like a large leak or a small leak. But what happens is this thing fails is when it doesn't close itself off. That's the most common problem with this thing, is it doesn't close itself. It gets stuck, and it's cheap, and it all it takes is a little bit of dirt to stop it from closing all the way, and you end up with the codes. So, but this is pretty much the same on like a Dodge Caliber, a Chrysler 300, a Dodge Ram. You're gonna see this under here, and you're gonna see this thing, and they pretty much all come off the same. So, but this one's failed. Definitely failed. It has 180,000 miles. It's failed. It doesn't close anymore. So it ended up with the gas. The car is trying to check itself, and it thinks the gas cap is off, but it's not. It's basically because this valve isn't closing. It just sees a big fat hole. So, but with the Jeep Wrangler, this is going to fail. And then specifically on the back of the gas tank, these things have the problem. There's like a nipple. I'll show you the nipple. This nipple right here. This nipple right here on top of the tank will break right off. Right there where that hose is right there, that thing will break right off. It's super common for some reason in some of these tanks for this to happen. And they'll give you the large leak also. But that's just with this Jeep Wrangler. Alright, so if you want to replace this thing, it's super easy, and it's the same in all the makes and models. You get your new one first. All you gotta do is take this hose. You gotta kind of twist it a little bit, and it'll come off and break free. Alright, then you got a connector here. You push the tab on the connector, pull the connector off. Alright, so right here you got this little piece of plastic. This is a limiter. I'm going to pull it towards you. Then you're going to turn this thing, and it'll come right off. Alright, so here's our old one. Now if we look inside of it, basically what it is all there is this little switch in there that moves around. Alright, and if you look, there's a little piece of rubber. It's kind of hard to see, but there's an orange thing right here. When that little piece of rubber gets dirty, pretty much this thing leaks. Or when this thing stops moving, it gets so dirty, it leaks. So it's a super easy fix. Here's the new one. And it has all these stops on it. It has all these plugs on it, so it doesn't get any dirt in there, but pull it off. Alright, so with some of the other model cars, when you go to take these off, I know with your your Chevrolets, there's actually an O-ring on these guys. This one doesn't have it. I think on your Dodge Caliber it might have an O-ring also, but this one doesn't have it, so you can just stick it right back on. All you gotta do is turn it. This connector, plug it back in, and blam, you're done. That's it. Alright, well, that's pretty much it. I'm going to talk about this gas tank one more time real quick. So I have seen people repair this with drill bits and pieces of plastic, and you can repair it like that. And or, the correct way to do it would be to buy a whole gas tank, and they're about $650. So A real quick way, if you have that code for the gross leak or the gas cap, is just to come up behind the Jeep, stick your head up in here, and see if that hose is just dangling up and down. If it is, there's your problem there. If you don't see it, this guy's your problem here. Alright, well, replacing that part was super easy. The next step would be to go ahead and clear the code. And basically, if you want to know if you're really not going to know if you fixed it until you drive the car around. You're going to need to drive through at least 1 tank of gas, and if the code, the check engine light or the code doesn't come back, or the message doesn't come back, you've pretty much fixed it. That should save you a little bit of cash if you do it yourself. The part's really not that expensive. Again, I'll leave the link down in the description box below for the part. And if you have any questions or anything, just drop them down in the comment box and I'll get back to you. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider it. And anybody that has, I really appreciate it. It really, really helps out the channel. And that's about it, man. You guys take care, be safe, and have a great weekend. Later.